tonight. Um, Bill will be on later to say what's up. Uh, Tonight we are focusing on a very special topic, but I just want to let you know that this program is produced and directed by People-Pueblo Party, who believes that we need to have common sense politics for the people, the planet, and the animals, and is also sponsored by the People's Health Project Incorporated, which is providing us with the equipment and the software to be able to have this live show. Now, tonight's topic is about kids going back to school during a pandemic, during a raging, out of control pandemic. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my co-host, which is Brother William Hargraves III. Bill, what's up? Say what's up to everybody.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm listening. I'm looking forward to tonight's program. As the kids say today, it should be lit. So I welcome everybody. Sit back and enjoy. There's a lot going on.
Yep. All right. So last week we had a great program, and we talked about how culture is used to promote survival during COVID time. And so we have a short segment here. It's only going to be 2 minutes. And I wanted to play this. This is something that Doctors Without Borders put together in Spanish. It's 2 minutes. Last week we played something from South Africa. And so we're just going to play this for a couple of minutes so you can see what people around the world are doing to have some buy-in, so folks can wear their masks, do social distance. In this country, the whole idea of masks and social distance is a horrible, horrible tragedy, right? And so I just wanted to play this real quick. It's 2 minutes, and then we'll get to our guest.
Ten cuidado, presta mucha atención. Si tienes fiebre, si tienes tos o dificultad para respirar, recuerda alejarte de los demás. Usa tapaboca y guarda tu distancia. Por si tienes que salir de casa, recuerda usarlo siempre que sea necesario. Si vas a ir al banco o al mercado, podemos orientar o más presenta. Por la línea médica brindarte atención. Y si estás muy mal, acude por urgencias. Mantén tu distancia con frecuencia. Papás y abuelos tienen mayores riesgos, pero todos nos podemos infectar. Evita el exceso de información y en las fuentes oficiales busca mejor. Y no te olvides de lavar tus manos bien. Al toser, estornudar, con el codo cúbrete. Y evita saludar de besos o de manos, porque así tú cuidas al que está a tu lado. Esta es una recomendación de Médicos Sin Fronteras.
I just brought that in because around the world, in different countries, they're using their culture, they're using, what people understand, what people know, what people feel safe and comfortable with, to get across to them that you should be wearing a mask, that you should be social distancing. And the countries in those countries, the governments in those countries are doing their best to have buy-in around being safe and about surviving COVID. And I don't see that in this country. And so every time we have a show, in the very beginning, we're just going to play a little something from another country, because there's something I tell my students in high school, and it's that other countries already have the virus under control. And they're like shocked. They're like totally surprised. They think that the whole world is going through the madness and the craziness that we're going through here. And I let them know, no, in other countries, especially like Singapore, even in China and South Korea, they have this thing under control, and they're opening up. Their businesses are opening up, their restaurants, their schools, and they're developing a new normal for life. And even a lot of the billionaires from the US, like Ray Dalio, are now setting up their money and their businesses in Singapore to trade with China and those countries that have the virus under control. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest. We're going to bring on Sister Brenda Walker. She's a longtime organizer, an activist. She's with the Coalition for Public Education. And I'm also going to bring out Sister Jia Lee, who is an organizer, longtime organizer, activist, educator with the Moore Caucus inside of the United Federation of Teachers. Okay. All right, y'all. I think we look great here. If you ask me, you know, for such an important topic, I think we've got some really powerful people on here. And Sister Betty Davis might come on later. So if I step off to give her the space, you know why I had to do that. Right. All right. So kids are going back to school. I think the city said they're going to start with elementary school. In the meantime, COVID is raging and out of control across the country. And we just want to get y'all perspective. So whoever wants to start first can start.
Okay. Well, this is just, it's crazy. We heard that the numbers were spiking. The numbers are spiking. That's what they've been saying, right? The numbers are spiking. That's what the governor has been saying repeatedly. They're spiking. So people have been saying that, oh, okay, it looks like another shutdown is imminent. But then we hear, as of today, schools will be reopened. So it's sending out more confusions because if the number is spiking, first of all, we believe that the schools should not have been opened when it was open. That's what CPE's position is. When they initially opened, we think that they opened without a clear plan, for safety, for the safety of the children, parents, teachers, all involved, school staff, everybody involved. And so therefore, we're saying that the schools should not have been opened when they did open. So they did it anyway. They opened it. Of course, they opened it with a delay. They opened it. Now they find out that, oh, for whatever reasons, I don't know. Parents were not given a reason at the time when they decided to close it again. We just heard that there was closed, and then we heard this 3% thing that supposedly no one ever heard before. So it was closed. And then we were told, oh, it probably won't open to, and when I say we, I mean parents were told that it probably won't open again to January. It's after the holidays. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, open again to December 7th. Okay. And it's open for 5 days. And that's not including middle school and the high school. So again, we're like saying that what plan is this? Because what CPE is saying, basically, what the focus needs to be on the devices, those devices that are not working properly, and the lack of Wi-Fi in areas, that's the main problem. And that should have been the main concentration, especially since we're now in flu season. And this is when, last year around this time, we were kind of like on pause to, when did we last year was in February that they closed the schools, but all the uncertainty happened around this time, December, January, February, and then they decided to close the schools. So we're kind of in this, we're repeat stage again. So it's just confusion as to why these schools had to open again. When it would normally close, this is around recess, right? Isn't this winter recess when the schools would basically close again?
Well, we have the breaks we have are we got what they call the Thanksgiving break, right? And then we have the Christmas break. Then we have in February we have the midwinter break, right? And I think this year April is the Easter break. So but you're right. The opening, the closing has been, I think, a product of inept and corrupt decision making. And then when they make decisions, a lot of folks, either students, parents, or staff, we have to hear about it from the news or a post on Facebook. So it really has been a disaster. It has been a disaster. Yes. Did you want to say something, Jia?
Sure, I'll add on. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, especially because Moore and CPE are completely allied. We were working together since March, right. Since they shut the schools down. We were fighting for that side by side. We've been fighting for Black Lives Matter at schools side by side for years now. And the only way to really try to get a grip or understanding on this is, I channel Naomi Klein and the shock doctrine. We're kept in constant confusion, constant flux, one change of decision from the next, where we don't have a grasp of a sense of like meaningful planning, any kind of respect to people's lives, and the ability to really do things thoughtfully, mindfully for our students, for our families. Remember, we're talking about putting tons of resources into keeping the schools open for just 25%. 75% of families have chosen to go fully remote. And the only reason why we were able to do that is because we've been organizing since March, exposing the truth about just systemic inequities from before COVID, and continuing on. We're like, no, the schools are not safe. I mean, I'm back in I'm elementary school. I'm a special education teacher. I went back in the building today. We're in a building that has window-based ventilation, meaning we don't have an HVAC system. We have to keep our windows open. And we were supposed to, according to the DOE's guidance, have fans to help circulate the air. The heat's on, but we have internal temperature. We bought our own digital thermometers. In the classroom today, it got to 52 degrees, and that's only with the top windows down, probably about 3 to 5 inches, depending on how far we could bring them. We were freezing. I've had the kids sitting on the heaters every time it's been cold. You can think back to like a month or two ago. I took pictures of it and I leaked it. I did not care. The media picked it up. But as we found out, we're finding out very clearly, they don't care unless we take some kind of collective action to withhold our labor, to shut it down. They really don't care. And it's interesting because right now you have a very small group of very entitled, privileged parents talking about keeping the schools open for their kids. Again, this is the 25%, right? Predominantly white families who somehow have not been impacted by COVID for some reason, and can't see how detrimentally and disproportionately it's impacted our predominantly Black and Brown community members. They don't seem to care. And I'm like, no. So we need to be shouting this from the rooftop. Educators are extremely exhausted right now. I know families are, but we have to regroup and we have to be loud because of our work, because of CPE, AQE, press, more, we got our families to go 75% fully remote. Only people keeping us safe is us right now.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Sister Betty, longtime activist with the new, and she's a participating, facilitating member of the People's United Front. She's also an active member of Black is Back Coalition and the New Abolitionist Movement. She's a pillar in our community and a great leader for all of us. So, Sister Betty, we were just giving initial thoughts about how kids are going back to school with the pandemic raging out of control. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my spot out with Brother Bill. I'll take care of the technical aspects of the show, and then he'll be moderating and making sure that y'all have enough time to present. So I'm going to go out, let Bill come in, but we heard from Sister Brenda, we heard from Sister Jia, and now we'd like to hear from you.
What's how much time do I have?
You need that much?
Well, it seems to me that the previous speaker covered a lot of the realities of our situation. So that's why I asked the question. And I want to thank you for having me on. And I'm very privileged to be on with this group that's presenting this evening. So one of the things I'd like to validate is that where children are intended to get an education they get educated. This is not only the wealthiest country in the world, but unfortunately, it's also a country where the privileged, the 1%, are in charge.
Yeah.
And they are in charge via corporations. And they are in charge by the mythology of a two-party system, where the party system is supposed to negotiate and be able to institutionalize the will of the people. But where you have poverty, extreme poverty, you have a situation where the party not only does not serve the will of the people, there is a cynicism about that. So here you have Biden admitting that the black people had his back. But the minute he is in and you look at the cabinet appointments that he is making, you realize he's just thumbed his nose at the people that had his back.
That's right.
The appointment that he has for the health institutions, absurd. The person that is supposed to be guarding and protecting our environment is a known destroyer of the environment. Just ask anyone in Louisiana.
Mm.
So, I mean, right away, he is not following up on any kind of promises. And
Yeah.
you can forget about a national health care. So now let's see about the issue of education. Already in New York City, we're starting out behind the eight ball because in the 1960s, when we had our human rights struggle, we fought for community control of
That's right.
public education for people who are non-European, just the way the European Americans have. Let's be clear. In public education, as the previous speaker made clear, the European American citizen has community control of public education. They control that budget, they control the contracts in their community, they
Mm-hmm.
control the curriculum in their community. And when we talk about contracts, you're talking about custodians, you're talking about electricians, you're talking about the healthcare in the kitchens, you're talking about the people who are responsible for cleaning the ventilation system. All of these are contracts that the city of New York handles. The budget for the New York City public school system is the 23rd largest budget in the world. There are countries that don't have budgets that large. You mean to tell me they can't educate two-thirds of their citizens' children who happen to be black and brown like the rest of the world? This
That's right.
is absurd. Where children are intended to be educated, they are educated. If you look at the issue of the crisis in health itself, the science tells us other countries with a smaller budget than ours were able to step in front of COVID-19. Where they could not, they still were able to protect their children within the public school system, such as they had in their countries. If you
Right.
look at Vietnam, if you look at Cuba, I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. But let's take the issue of New York City, where we have more black representatives in the borough of Brooklyn than you have ever had in the history of this country. And it is disgusting because in some of the communities where the majority of the black and brown children live, the ventilation systems in two-thirds of the public school system have never been addressed for over 20 years. That was published. That's published information.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, recently, a community board member had to send a letter to the political powers that be from their education committee saying nicer housing needed Wi Fi services immediately. Now,
Wow.
most of us, I would say, probably know more than I know about technology. I always thank God for grandkids, the ages of 9 to 12, when I'm trying to do something different technologically speaking, even though I am an educator. The way the science of technology is changing so rapidly, I admit I can't keep up with it. However, however, when you have more than 70% of the children who are economically disadvantaged without the tablets that they need, and who cannot, and I know Sister Brenda probably covered this, even if they have Wi Fi, the parents may be home on their own working on the computer. So that means their budget for Wi-Fi is challenged. So these are issues that if you plan ahead of time, you can address. I'd also like to address, if Sister Brenda has not addressed this, the issue of homelessness in this community and how that works against whatever goodwill the Board of Education in New York may have. Because if a child is living in a shelter, you can't always guarantee the security of whatever instruments of technology the board gives to that child.
Okay.
So
So hold on, Sister Betty. We have
go ahead.
sometimes what we do on the show is we share uh, comments that people write in the public chat. So I'm just gonna share the next comment, and then I'm gonna bring Bill back on because I'm not sure if Bill knows how to share the comments from the chat. I don't know if I ever got to show him how to do that. But I'm going to share it, and basically all I'm doing is I hover over the chat, and then a word in a white word in orange background says show, and then you click that, and it does this, and it gives you the person's name as Robert Nisanoff. I know he's a teacher. He's a good brother. We were in the '89 student strikes at CUNY together, and his comment is correct. This is a deliberate attempt to hide information from the public and specifically city employees. There is a culture of divisiveness that intentionally sows mistrust among all people who are endangered by this pandemic. So that's his comment, and maybe we can go back to Sister Brenda. Would you like to say anything about Robert's comment?
Yeah, this is definitely true. I concur with that statement. Um, I don't even know what to say. It's a sad situation. We're all kind of grappling in the dark, trying to figure out how this thing is going to work, And Betty did touch on, and Sister Gia touched on the fact that the low income communities are the most compromised within this pandemic. Well, I call it a pandemic. I don't know how y'all other folks feel about it. It just looks like we should all be suspicious, and this brother's right on target with what he's saying, because we're all in the dark. It even looks like our elected officials are in the dark. They can't figure out what's the right move to make. I don't understand how a governor can call the spike, it's spiking, and the mayor, who they're supposed to be in conversation with each other on a regular basis, I don't see how he can then claim that the schools should reopen. It's just not making sense, and it has us all trying to figure it out. So what are we all going to be scrambling to see? Like what Gia mentioned, that the schools in those other communities, that smaller, that 1%, she characterizes the 1%, that they are the ones that are crying that the schools must remain open. So what are we now? We're left to what? Kind of fight over who should be in school, who shouldn't be in school. I don't understand what's going on. It's not making any sense. Every child has a right to public education, a free public education, and all children should be educated. But it should be in an area of safety concerns for all, not just for some people that feel like their child should be educated. We're in a pandemic, so we know that children are going to be behind. So if someone's going to be behind, it should be everyone that just have to be behind. We all have to suffer together. It shouldn't be one group that's favored over another.
I'm gonna thank you for that, Brenda. Long time no see. I don't know if you remember me, but
of course.
Okay, it's good to see you. It's good to see you. I'm gonna let Gia jump in on this too. But one of the things that before I bring you in, Gia, I just want to say that not only that, they keep changing the terms of endearment. I mean, you have one set of terms that once they suspended school and you had to recess, that parents was waiting, and then they prematurely was going to let children in, and then it was an uproar, so they spent more time. They wanted to err on the side of caution, and then they had a set of rules, and then they changed them, and then when they decided to go back and it was outcry. They went whichever way the wind was blowing. Then you get where Cuomo conveniently doesn't say anything. He's always gauging the temperament so that he doesn't does anything to hinder his inevitable presidential run.
Right.
And then you got Mike Mogul. I'm surprised he even came from. I thought it was Groundhog Day when he came out today. I thought it was going to be a longer winter. So I mean, all these things play into the politics and why there is a mistrust. That's a good point that Robin made, and the homelessness is another point because I mean we could touch. I want to go back to Sister Betty's comment on homelessness, but before I do that, because I think that's a very important topic because it has to do with mental stability and being cooped up and not having no outlet and all those other factors. But I just want before I do that, I want Jia just to comment on Robert's comment too, if you want to interject.
Yeah, Robert's comment really connects to what I was saying about, this being a classic case of shock doctrine, right? Naomi Klein clearly outlines and details how outright unbridled capitalist powers that be manipulate conditions to the benefit of a few. This is blatant. It's just so blatant. We talk about Trump being bad, right? But bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think about Martin Luther King said in his letter from a Birmingham jail about the moderate, and here are these supposed moderates, right? I think we have to, I like to focus on thinking about getting clear as a movement and not always feeling like we're just in this cloud, being shuffled around, but rather let's get clear on what our values are, but also like the systems and practices that we want to put into place so that when things like this happen, we're prepared and we're ready to counter it or to create a different reality for ourselves. As a teacher right now who's in the building, I know for a fact I've had meetings upon meetings, emergency meetings, teachers saying, we don't want to go back in. We know what we're stepping into. Folks don't know that already several of our schools have received phone calls from families, and this is from the families who took it upon themselves to get tested, right? This is the information that the mayor and the chancellor's office do not share with the general public. We get phone calls on a regular basis that families took it upon themselves to get tested and they tested positive. Not only that, but last week, this is a straight example from my school, they were at a child's birthday party from a whole group of students from our school. So they are admitting they exposed other families and children. So then what if they didn't get tested? What if these parents didn't get tested? And they come into the school and we're supposed to go back. We know people traveled. Yes. Didn't Cuomo and everyone else talk about, shame on people for traveling? Mm-hmm. They know people were traveling, and the home situations where people were gathering, they knew about this. Yet there's, like Brenda and, like Betty are saying, there's confusion on, okay, but the in-school infection rate, they keep referring to this really low infection rate. So as a teacher who today, they sent testers to our school to test random 20%. They sent us a digital version of a consent form because now it's mandatory, right? All families have to consent to testing except for pre-K. And we're trying to get them, and a lot of our families volunteer for that. But no, the testers came today, and the kids who had their parents do digital consent, they said they refused to acknowledge those. This happened in our school building today. I'll tell you right now, we are very vocal at my school. I teach at their school. We're very vocal. We're very close to our families. We were very honest. We have very low students coming into the building right now. In fact, more families went from blended to fully remote after hearing the mayor's announcement that we were opening on the 7th. They were expecting like it after in January, maybe even February. But when they heard that, they were disgusted, and they said no. They're not trying to. They don't care. They really don't care. So guess what? Our numbers were already low. They got even lower at 2 students today. And that's going to be in one of our groups, 2 whole students. So you're right. The truth, ask a teacher, ask anyone in the building for the truth. And we'll tell you what's really going on. They're fudging the numbers. They're making it political, they're politicizing or politrictioning.
Well, I'm a thank you for that. And I want to just add before I turn it over to Sister Betty, because I wanted to go back to some of the things she said. One thing that she did say, she had a play on words. She talking about schools supposed to be for to get educated, but they are getting educated, which I assume that they meant that maybe they're not getting the education that they were going to school for, but they are getting an education, a vast education in terms of the politics, the capitalism, and even at a young age. Some of the things you don't understand at a young age, but you retain it till you are able to understand it. And not only that, I think that the educators such as yourself have to take this opportunity to continue to push the narrative in terms of making changes. Sister Betty again talked about the parents controlling the board of ed, as we knew that was done in Brownsville with such leaders that's made their transition, such as Sonny Carson, G2YOC and the likes. And we have to take this opportunity because certain principles that was in their spot, they need to be moved. Mike Mogul need to be moved. So the movement needs to be continuous. You need to make them all feel as uncomfortable as they felt when they were scared to sneeze, as I just did, or say anything that can be construed in the worst way, in the wrong way, during the height of the pandemic, of the social movement, the global social movement that was taking place over the summer. And I think that you can't let too much dust settle because people start getting complacent and they don't answer your call. So I think this is a good time for you to form a coalition if you have one. If not, come together like we do on Sundays, United Front, People's United Front, and make wholesale changes. And if they don't make wholesale changes, let them know that it will be no peace until they hear some of what you got to say and make some changes as what we call that as a good start.
Right.
So I'm gonna turn it back over to Sister Betty, and she can elaborate on what she talked about in education that they're getting. Also, when she talked about the homelessness. So, Sister Betty.
Oh, thank you so much. One of the things I noticed in the chat on my screen is that someone mentioned is that the number of working class parents, especially homeowners, single women who are struggling to work while educating 2 to 3 kids, and how the government must empower these families. One of the things, I had a conversation with Charles Barron, who made it clear that for one of the budgets this year, they didn't include an increase for health. And if you know about the New York City public budget for education, there was, I believe, a 3% cut this year. And still, I think Sister Brenda told me it was like $34 billion. So if you look at the budget, one of the things you realize is if the community's voice was empowered, we would have transparency. We would have the community be involved in the policy making. And one of the things that I want everyone to do is to go to the state of Black people in this country. It was the State of Black America, published every year by the National Urban League.
Yes.
The issue of an underclass, and that's what you have in America. You have an underclass that is perpetuated by capitalism. And so I appreciate the brother commenting on my tongue in cheek, because the truth of the matter is cats, C-A-T, don't educate mice. They eat them. That is what capitalism is. The cats eat the mice. You are here to feed them. And if you look at the state of Black America this year, as published by the National Urban League, I really urge every American citizen who considers himself a good citizen to read that document. This impact of COVID-19 is speaking into the disaster of what capitalism and racism, the two converging forces in this country, are doing to African Americans. And many of the people who are in ICE, which are really a
Yes.
euphemism for concentration camps, are suffering the
Mm,
same um,
mm,
situations. And these are the two categories of children that are coming to our city. And once I was talking to
yeah.
a young man who was from Nicaragua, and he was talking about how he missed his home. So I said, well, if you miss it, so why are you here? And he said, well, your people came to my country and they stole all the wealth and they weaponized the local police
Mm,
against those of us who would fight back. So I came to your country to get a little back of what you stole from my country. So I have no problems with the so-called immigrants coming here. They're coming here because everything that they had there was stolen and brought here, just as we were stolen and brought here. But we have an opportunity. We are a majority. And that is why the issue of fighting mayoral control is so important now. They have proven they cannot
yes.
lead. They have proven
Uh,
they cannot be trusted. Because as you all are saying, they say one thing this week and they say another thing this week, next week. In addition to that, there are certain COVID-19 priorities. Workers need to have adequate sanitation products.
yes.
That's a budget issue. The
That's
money
right.
is there. You cannot convince me that with a budget of $34 billion, you can't afford enough hand sanitizer for every worker in the building.
Crazy.
You cannot
Exactly.
convince me that you are paying these people five-figure salaries and they don't know how to organize and set up for distancing for children, for plexiglass frames around each desk, to have enough custodial assistants to support the custodian so that after every class session there is a wiping down and a cleaning, and
That's
it
right.
should not be the children who have to do this. So these are
Right.
just simple scientific things to protect our children. And I want to remind people that good government is when the government fears the people, not
Mm,
the other way around. There is
right.
something called the social contract. Rousseau, Locke, Hume. This country claims to be based on the social contract. I urge you to read Charles Mills. He's a Jamaican philosopher, Jamaican
Yes.
American philosopher. And what he says we have in this country is a racial contract
Mm,
that is
yes.
anti the working class. And
Yes.
because the upper classes have broken and violated that contract, we are not obligated to listen to them. We are not obligated to obey them. We have to do what is best for the next generation of children. And that is why I want to thank you for having me on. I want to encourage
Each.
everyone, pay
Each.
attention to your local politician. Do not neglect your rights as citizens. If you are expecting your government to do anything for you, you are wrong. You have to be proactive. And I want to salute Sister Gia and Sister Brenda for being who they are because they give people an opportunity to learn. And I want to salute Brother Mark Torres and all of you who are here tonight who are listening and writing in the chat. I would encourage everybody, now is not the time to give up. There is a serious economic crisis and it's global. It is not just in this country. And now
Right.
is the time for people like us to organize, to tell the truth, and to hold every local politician's feet to the fire. There are
Yes.
some public schools in New York City that are successful, that
Yeah.
are following the safe protocols. And if one school can do it, all of them can do it.
That's true.
And I encourage parents to find out
I
about
say,
schools because they're willing to help and they're willing to help you know what procedures they have in place to be successful. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
well put. I say I agree with that. Thank you. And I just want to touch on a couple of points before I turn it over. Um, you, you talked about mayoral control. That's a good point because we're fast approaching an election. And the field, a lot of the field people that's in the field looks like us, and if they have our best interest and they know the um the um the problems that's always confronted us, where people always speak for us instead of going to the community, always de-arming us and taking our power from us, then that should be a point of focal. And it's funny because I remember on de Blasio's first run, that was a big topic, mayoral control, because it started with Bloomberg, and that's when me and Brenda was doing some work. We was at a lot of um um grassroots rallies, organization planning committees, and things of that nature. And that's where I met G2IOC too. May rest in peace. But I think it's a point that you need to be brought back up. I don't think that they should be able to floss it over. And I think if anybody is in the company and able to ask that point, be prepared for them to floss it over, but be prepared to come back. Don't let them skirt it. And that's what I'm talking about when you got to keep the pressure on them, keep your foot on the pressure. These are things that we can bring back up, that all these things can come back up to the surface. I think that's very important. And you talked about the schools too. Um, you talk about the cleanliness or the uncleanliness of the school. Um, because of my position that I've taken to try to be a liaison for several schools in Harlem, people had came to me in the last few years leading up to this pandemic and talked to me. And you're talking about capitalism and economic structure, that has and have not. In the same school building, they was telling me that they didn't have detergent to clean the public schools, but in a public school they had detergent just clean the charter part of the public schools. That's amazing. And this was told to me on several occasions, and it's just been a problem that's been ongoing. And I guess in a way, the this is a blessing in disguise, somewhat, the COVID, because it's putting a light, shining a light on the poor ventilation system, the poor hygienes in terms of the school, it's not hygiene, but the lack of care that they gave to the school. So these are all excellent points, and I just say that we just have to keep bringing up the same point, keep bringing up the same points. Don't let them up, let them off the hook. And sometimes you can bite off more than you can chew, as they say. So what I think what we need to do is certain points like mayoral control is very important. Whether it's 3 point, 5 point, that we need to really hone in on and stick with that and develop a strategy around those points. And mayoral control, I would say, Sister Betty, it has to be at the height in the forefront of it.
I want to emphasize Sister Brenda's organization. I don't know if she had a chance to talk about it, but
No.
organizations that give parents and community information. I want to emphasize also that I'm in touch with educators where they have been successful in keeping their attendance up through this virtual learning hybrid situation that the New York City Board of Education allegedly has, Department of Education is allegedly doing. And I do not want anyone who listens to me tonight to feel that accountability cannot be achieved by the licensed professionals that are in our schools. But
Right.
I once heard a Haitian woman say to me that this is a Haitian saying: the fish stinks from the head.
Yep.
The fish
Yeah.
stinks from the
Right.
head. And so, again, I encourage everyone. There are organizations out there that have the expertise and can help you assist your school. There's a group called the Health Justice Agenda .squarespace.com. Again, healthjusticeagenda.squarespace.com. And I think there's another group called AQE. I think it's a quality
Quality.
education. That's
Yeah.
another group.
Alliance for
Alliance.
Quality Education.
Alliance for Quality. I go to their websites and I look for the different protocols when people call me and have problems. The most important thing is that you have got to have a health justice agenda for the New York City schools.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
one school can do it, the whole system can do it. And
Right.
that's why I encourage people, the first thing you have to do is what Scrooge said in A Christmas Story. I don't know anything. And when you can say, hey, I don't know anything, then you have a beginning. Don't be
Right.
afraid to say, I don't know the answer. Because one thing in New York City, there's a lot of people with expertise. The other
Right.
thing is, if you underestimate the importance of the knowledge of the parents and community in New York City, that is an incredible resource. They are incredible allies.
That,
I have to give a shout out to every parent in every school that I've ever been in. If it wasn't for them, I would not be who I was today. They had my back. And I just
right.
publicly want to say thank you. They're still out there. Give them a chance to fight for
Right.
their public school system.
Exactly.
Thank you, Sister Betty. Gia, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for shouting out the health justice agenda. That's through the movement of rank and file educators. It started with our Bronx group, the Bronx group of more teachers. And please check us out because we're definitely training teachers to organize within their own schools. We're only as strong as our members, as our membership. We need to take on a different kind of philosophy and ideology within our own union. It has to shift. We need to change it. And it begins with acknowledging that the power of the union is in its membership and in each school. It's the relationships, how strong our relationships with our families and our students. Those relationships are critical to building racial justice. Without that, I don't know that we can do it. So that means that we're not aligned with the union leadership, have never been. They turned their backs in the 1960s to community-controlled schools. We know this. And male control has to go. There's a chance now. The union, for a long time, I argued with them about agreeing. It was when Randy Weingarten was president. And she's the one that agreed to,
Oh my God.
yeah, she's the one that agreed to it because I'm
Oh,
sure,
yeah, I went to Washington.
yeah, there was probably some promise, personal promise to her. I'm not gonna, get some position. And I'll say right now, like this, that has to end. That kind of behind closed doors, out for one's own self-interest and, climbing up whatever political Democratic Party ladder that they think that they're going on. Have to get rid of those kinds of avenues and really build grassroots, and just grassroots power, but community power.
And can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
I think it's up to us to also help the parents through this technological gap that exists as a real expression of poverty. And Sister Brenda helped educate me this afternoon when she was saying, even when a parent has Wi-Fi, if the parent is working from home and then the child has to get on and do lessons, they're not budgeted for that much usage of Wi-Fi. And I never even thought about that. Then
Yeah, that's a good
how do
point.
parents negotiate the Google Classroom? I was with my godchild and he says, Godmommy, I got kicked out of the room. So I said, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean you got kicked out of the room? You're not in a room. But he was in a room. When the classroom shut down, he had to go to another room, i.e. the technical language, and he could not get in. And so I think things like this, every parent needs to have a lesson. And unfortunately, sometimes it has to be a hands-on lesson. Not everybody learns well through remote learning. And finally, all of the school-based support team needs to be on call. There's some families where a grandmother is dead from COVID, where a mother's dead from COVID, where a brother is dead from COVID, all in the same family. And you expect this child to get on a long-distance lesson? Focus?
Exactly.
This is
Nope.
absurd.
That's a good point. I agree with that. And I would like, I'm gonna give Brenda a minute to comment because I remember you taking me back. I remember when and this is some of the points that from years ago we had decided that we was gonna run somebody at every position, but we didn't do that. We was gonna have Carmen run for position. Remember, Brenda, we had everybody stacked up to run for every position. And I would say that I would suggest that again, that you got to get somebody, to me, if not somebody running for every position, just attack enough positions. And you got to really, it's tireless work. But you got to start mobilizing. It's like all of us. We are in the committee, and we have a fundraiser every year, and everybody's is responsible for 10 tickets. So now here it is. The fundraiser is next month, and you call me, and I'm saying, oh well, it's good to hear from Brenda. It's good to hear from Gia or Betty, and then 10 minutes into the conversation, you start throwing the pitch to sell me the tickets. Now, I'm not going to tell you, but I'm offended because we're friends. I haven't heard from you, but now I realize the nature of your call, which is solicit my money. So my point is this: if we're going to make, if we're going to attack certain things, we got to be strategic. So you got to start now. And you don't have to do anything but press the flesh. Reach out to somebody.
Right.
Talk to them 5 minutes. Call them in 2 weeks later. Talk to them for another 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. You have to build that relationship in because you got common things to talk about, and that's how you build. That's how you build that grassroots movement. And that's how you swell that movement. And so we have to really be conscious because if you're educated, and I always said this, the most underrated people in the profession is teachers, because I don't care what you ask them to be. You want to be the president of the United States? You want to be a lawyer? You want to be a doctor? You want to be an electrician? You got to have basic education. And every family can trust their child to the educator. So, two, you're underpaid, underappreciated, you're devalued. When the charter school came, they tried to put down the rubber room and things of that nature, and try to get rid of teachers by hook or crook. They got red carpet treatment. So you really have to do is tireless work, but you have to find you a nucleus of people so that you don't get burnt out. Right. So that you can stack these victories. Because when people get discouraged, you got to show them, no, remember this over here? This little stone, we slayed the lie. We was able to do that. And we was able to do this. You got to stack victory. No matter how minute or how intermediary or how large, we have to stack victories, but we have to be strategic and we have to plan. And you can't wait till it's time for you to sell that ticket to call your friend a week before. You have to start in advance. And you have to have them fear you. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Brenda because I don't want to monopolize the mic, but is there anything that you want to say, old or new? Because I know I went back in time with things that we did in the past.
I just wanted to add on to what Betty was saying about the parents. She gave the scenario of the parents working and not enough bandwidth to address the Wi-Fi issues, but also to that piece is the parent who has to do her own work, that have to do her job, that's required to put in work for the day, and also address the issues that the children are dealing with as they're doing their schoolwork. So she has to be both work parent and teacher and address those issues and still put in a day's work while she's dealing with the issues of the devices that are not functioning properly, so that's a lot. So it's also adding to our psyche and also other issues dealing with psychological issues because of this pandemic, and just dealing with the whole issue around isolation that the children are dealing with. Children go to school for socialization. So now that they're in their homes and they're not able to touch, we're touchy-feely people, that you're not able to reach out and touch and even hug people because we're in this pandemic, is doing so much to our psyche right now. We don't see it right now, but in another year, it's going to be some COVID-related disorders because of what we're going through right now with this pandemic. And then I wanted to also touch on the issue of mayoral control. Now we got like 100 candidates now that's running for office now. So we need to find out what is their stance, or we need to nail into their heads that, mayoral control must end because it's not working. It has not worked. And we see now this mayor is evidence that he cannot fulfill the goals of the He cannot fulfill the office of a one person in charge of 17 to 1800 schools. It just does not work. We've seen the whole Mutt and Jeff routine is not working. They don't know what they're doing. They can't get it together. They can't get on the same page. They can't figure it out. And everybody's looking up to them because they're the ones that we were left to look to. It's not working. It hasn't worked. And there was a commission that Charles Barron put out to study what are the best practices as far as the school structures. We need to look at that and figure out what's the model that we're gonna have moving forward, because we owe it to our children. That's just it.
Thank,
Oh God, food.
And so we're going
thank
to get
you.
out there
I see.
and raise those issues. That's what we plan to do.
Yeah, and we need to let them know if they're not going to back us with mail, in the mail control, that we're not going to back them, and if they want to be elected. We really need to form an alliance and a united front with that. I just want to read a couple comments Robert talks about, and it's another good point that piggybacks off the point that Brenda made that she shared with Sister Betty, was that fact that you have siblings, multiple siblings sharing one laptop.
Yes.
So if you got that situation, then I mean, who's really getting educated? Who's getting a complete, wholesome education?
Right.
That's something I would have never thought about. And Mark also talked about the movement of rank and file educators. So I really don't know if somebody wants to comment on that, exactly what that means, but maybe
Gia.
I'm just guessing.
That's me.
Gia, you want to speak on it? Go ahead.
Yeah, the movement of rank and file educators more as a caucus. We formed about 10 years ago within the UFT. It's kind of how we've been creating the space within our union to do the work that our union is not, basically. We have an ideological cohesion around racial justice and undoing white supremacy, decolonizing our pedagogy, decolonizing our union, and decolonizing the DOE, because frankly, mayoral control comes out of ed reform policies that came out of ALEC. It was part of a package deal to take over and privatize. And charterization is not the end game. And we know this. So as educators who are in it, we're either going to succumb to it and get lost in it, or we got to fight it and say we can change this reality and not let it happen. So we're kind of on the front lines, and we know our kids are and our families are, and that's why we need to be united. And I'm so grateful that that we're all together on this.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to thank everybody here. I'm going to bring Bill back on, but we're at the segment of the show now where we're going to start putting on announcements, because I know Sister Betty, when we had the People's United Front meeting on Sunday, there was some really good people from Louisiana. I don't know, Sister Betty, if you remember the program that they were talking about. And if you do, please share what they're doing in Louisiana with us as part of our announcements. And then I'll bring Bill back on to finish up the announcements. And also, Sister Betty, I'm going to come off, put Bill back on. If you can also share the announcements for the next meeting of the People's United Front. Is that okay? All right. All right. So let me make sure your mic is unmuted, and I'm going to let Bill come right back in.
Should I start now?
Yeah, you can hear me? Yeah, go ahead, by all means. Take it away.
I want to also remind people that the organization of the Louisiana United International will be having an online vigil for the Angola prisoners. The Supreme Court has decided to overthrow thousands of convictions in Louisiana that came about as a result of a 9-member jury instead of 12-member juries. And the state of Louisiana apparently has decided to use their COVID extra money to retry all they needed was 9 guilty votes, pardon me. And the state of Louisiana has decided to use their COVID money to retry these prisoners rather than turning them loose as instructed by the Supreme Court. So what I would appreciate is everyone would go to Louisiana United International. Just Google that, and the dates. Put the dates of the December 13th and 14th in your calendar. Also, for the People's United Front, December 20th, 2 p.m. is our next meeting of the People's United Front. And last but not least, December 10th, if you will go to the Jericho Political Prisoner website, December 10th, as you know, is International Human Rights Day, and we are having a special Zoom to free our political prisoners, particularly Mamiya Abu Jamal, Matula
Yeah.
Shakur, Ed Poindexter, Russell Maroon Schultz, and Sundiata Akoli are in serious health crisis due to a COVID-19. And we know that a raised fist by many people can make a difference. So we're saying now is the
Yes.
time to organize and unite around these emergencies. So for Louisiana United, we're going to free the Angola 8,000. It's 2,000 to 8,000 human beings we're talking about. And that date is December 13th and 14th. For the People's United Front, it is December 20th. Uh, you should Google that, People's United Front. There will be a Zoom link coming out for that. And please remember your political prisoners. We're all standing on their shoulders. The space that we have for freedom today is based on these political prisoners who are still incarcerated under the Patriot Act, and we need to free them. And that's
Yes.
December 10th, Human Rights Day. Thank you for allowing me to make these announcements.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any announcements that they want to make? Any final comments? Go ahead, Gia.
Oh no, I just wanted to say thank you all so much. And then looking forward to continuing our work together.
Well, we thank you for the information that you supply and its perspective from inside the schools too, because we need to know that. Because, like you said, I mean, it's a lot of things that we don't know. You're having tomorrow a class of a whole 2 pupils. I mean, I don't want to say it's a waste of money, because anytime somebody gets hands-on education, we're thankful for that. But the money could be, in common sense, could have went a lot further. I think that's what you're saying, and I think we all echo that. Brenda, you got any closing comments, or announcements, anything?
I just wanted to it just brought to mind something we were speaking earlier. Myself and my co-chair, Muba Yara Falani, we were talking about the Title I funding, what's happening with the Title I funding that is supposed to be rolled back over. So we want to know what's going on with the funding. We were also hearing that there's a different budget. It's not in the budget as far as the cleaning, so we don't understand why the schools are not being cleaned properly when that budget is set aside. It's a set aside budget, not coming from the regular school budget. So we don't understand what's going on and what's happening with the monies that's being saved since the schools are not functioning right now. So there's we're asking for. I'm sorry, we were creating a letter. We're asking for, or we're demanding that services be provided, like wraparound services for the children that are in schools, aside from the Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi in all areas, because Betty touched on the homeless communities, or children that are homeless. The children that are homeless do not have functioning Wi-Fi's, and we saw that report on New York One just a couple of days ago, where they had the devices with no Wi-Fi, so things are not connecting. So we're asking for those things. We're asking for so many services that our children need because of this pandemic. Again, speaking to the whole issue around psychological problems that we're all dealing with, not just the children, but the parents as well. So it's training that needs to be done across the board for children, parents, the schools, to everybody. Needs to have some kind of support for what we all are going through as we continue, whether we're doing the in-classroom learning or even remote learning. So, because we're speaking to isolation again. So that's all I wanted to say. And we're going to continue to work and build, because that's all we can do. We have to continue to fight. And I will be reaching out to you, Gia, because we we used to do a lot of work together. So we need to, moving forward, continue that. Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Betty, for
Okay, I want.
and thank you, Bill, Mark.
Thank you too, Brenda. I want to read this. It says, it's from Jose. It says, this Saturday, December 12th, the People-Pueblo Party is hosting a workshop from 4 to 6 on popular economics taught in a popular education style. Go to Facebook page tomorrow for more information and to sign up. And to some of your comments, Brenda, I would say to you, I also think that you just gotta keep the pressure on them. I think that would be one of the things that I would walk away from them. I mean, see about getting the books ordered pre-pandemic, because we know they found the money to clean the schools during the pandemic. But what about pre-pandemic? Just make them feel squirmish, very uncomfortable, and just get your alliance together, because it would be a shame that through all of this this pandemic of social awareness, that at the end of the day, it's not wholesale massive changes. You're not going to change everything,
Right.
but it should be significant changes, and should always go back as a reference point. They say, "Yo, hey, don't say that can't happen." Remember the summer of 2020, and remember this person, that person. I didn't think they was ever going to move him, or I thought she was going to set her own term. We need to set the precedent, and you don't want this thing to be recreated to say for next time, because that meant that a lot of people had to be harmed. Let's capitalize and keep the pressure and agitate as some of our iconic leaders have shown us, by any means necessary. Name the quotes. If I fall, let me fall 5 feet 4 inches forward towards freedom. It's Fannie Lou Hamer. Let's say the quote. And also, Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Action is January 18, 2021, where we're going to do some actions on designated areas. So if you want to know more about that, tune into People-Pueblo Power on Mondays. And also, if you have any questions, you're on the workshop on Saturday. Jose and the likes can lead you to that. So, Mark, you want anything in closing?
I just want to thank Bill, my co-host. We really are brothers in this struggle. And, I just wanted to end it and in a way that we, people feel energized, people feel like we could do this, because I think Sister Betty pointed out earlier, American capitalism is in decay. This society is crumbling. What they've done in this country is criminal. They've taken resources from the public sector, which traditionally help poor and working people, especially Black and brown people, and have just they're giving all the money to the billionaires. They're giving all the money to the banks. They're giving all the money to the military. They're giving all the money to the prisons. And they're really bankrupting this country. And and you can see that U.S. capitalism is in decay. There's the rise of China now. And so we're becoming the old, the dead, the empire that is, as it's collapsing, is devouring its own people. That's why COVID is out of control. And so these relationships we forge here, as Bill was laying out from the beginning, is what's going to help us save lives. We need to take action to save lives. And so, again, we welcome everybody to participate with the People's United Front on December 20th. We have a national Zoom call. Last Sunday, we have folks from, Oakland, from San Francisco, from LA, from Louisiana, from New Jersey. And on Dr. King Day, on January 18th, 2 days before Joe Biden is inaugurated, we want to make a statement. We have the people's 10 demands, and we want them to know it's not going to be business as usual. So I thank everyone for being so informative and in solidarity with us. And I'm going to put Bill back on, but I love all of you and thank you. And I apologize to Brenda earlier because I had resigned from the Coalition for Public Education when I was the chair, and I think that was a big mistake. And I'm hoping to renew my bonds and my relationships with the people I love and respect.
Yes.
All right. So let me put Bill back on the coalition. Thank you.
Can you hear me? All right. All right. So I want to thank all the sisters, and I really have to say I have to take our hats off to the fact that the guest speakers and the experts were all sisters, all women. So I mean, it's about time that society is starting to stop overlooking you and taking you for granted. I mean, God created us equal, and why not be led by women? Why can't they be in a power structure? Why is it still today that if you given the same job as a white male or a black man, the black man makes less than the white man, and the woman makes less than the black man, and they have the same title with the same responsibility? When is that going to stop? So the more that we see you in leadership and expertise position and giving your take on things, hopefully that day is in the near future, within the next 12 months. Let's hope. Yes. Because there's no reason.
Here,
All
here.
right. So I'll say straight ahead. We got to be our own liberator. It's a saying that I used to tell people: I will work with you, but I won't work for you. And we want to find people that if they have a problem, that they don't drop it off to us because they heard that we're doers, that we're movers and shakers, that we're agitators, and that we're activators and activists. And so here, go to this person, they'll do it, and they'll come back for the results. No, we want people that's going to work with us for their problems. And at this time, I'm just going to close the way we always do with our fists in the air, and we say, power to the people, people, power, and straight